In this video, I want to talk deeper about component props inside Vue. Hi, I am Ekaterina from Monsterlessons Academy, where I am teaching you how to become a developer or improve your skills of being a developer in learning by doing way. And if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will link everything that I am mentioning in the description box below. And just to remind you, this video is a part of free series Vue for Beginners. So let's jump right into it. In previous video we talked about router and created two router links. Now I want to talk deeper about props inside Vue. Actually, we already used them inside our components user list, and here we wrote our props users, actually just one prop, to get an array, and we just simply said that it is required. Now let's create one more shareable component, and we won't really implement it, but I just want to show you how we need to specify all props in order to have good validation errors and avoid bugs. So let's say that we want to create shareable component pagination. It is actually really shareable. Normally we can render different lists with it, for example, users or posts and so on, and we just need to provide there some parameters. This is why I will create it here in source components, and let's name it pagination.vue. Now inside, let's simply write some plain template. We won't do this component, but at least div with word pagination we need. Now let's create here script and close our script. And we want to export here the object with name pagination. Now let's use this pagination component inside our Vue's users. As you can see here on the right, I opened users and we already have here component user list. And actually we can import here our new pagination component. So it will be add components, and here will be pagination. And now we should not forget to register it inside components list. And now we can simply render it somewhere here under our users list. So it will be pagination, and we simply close it. Let's check in browser. Now, as you can see, we have after our users list here on the bottom pagination. This means that our component is successfully created. So now it's time to add some properties. The first question, what properties do our pagination need? So what is pagination? This is just an array of links, like you have page 1, page 2, and so on until the last page. So normally you need to know the total amount of your entities like articles or users, and normally you are getting this information from API. So let's say here that we are requiring inside our props new property which will be total. So here is props as an object, and we are saying that we have property total. And we know that total should be a number because it's the number of articles or posts or users. So here we're defining, okay, it is type number, and of course it is required because our component can't really work without total. And the point is that now when we're reloading the page, we're getting here a nice message, missing required prop total. Which means actually people can't use our component run because we are setting exactly what properties our component needs. And now let's add some mock data to our pagination from the parent. So for this I will create here, for example, property total. And let's say that in total we have 500 articles. So now here we can use this parameter total, so we're providing inside it from our data. And when I reload the page, I don't see any errors now. And as you can see, our pagination is there, and actually we can render here our property total. So as you can see in browser, we are getting here 500. So it is super important to create really valid props, and actually it is possible to create them not correctly, because normally people are starting writing not like this, but they are simply saying, okay, total number. And in this case, by default, it won't be required. And we really need to explicitly say if it is required or not. because it is really helping that other developers can later see, okay, this property is really required or not required. And if you just write it like standard, like this, then it is not clear. Is it so intended, or it is just like this by default, or is it copy-paste? The next property that we need, of course, it is the limit. So how many items we will render on our page. So we are providing here our limit, and we know that how many items means type number. And also we need to require it. So we are simply saying required true. And as previously here, we are getting a message missing required property. So we are getting it now here. Let's say that we have our limit 20. And now we can pass our limit inside our component. So here is limit equals limit. And now we don't have any errors anymore, and we can use this limit inside our pagination component. So let's render it now. And here is our limit. So here we have 20. The next point is that we need to have current page. So actually from the parent, normally, and if you watched previous video, you saw how we worked with query parameters inside router. If you didn't, then go check this video. I will link it down in the description. But actually, as you can see in my router, it is possible that we have query params like page equals 5, and normally we are getting it from the URL and passing inside our pagination. So this is why we are saying here that we want to know our current page, and our current page also needs to be number. And in this case, it is really nice that we have props, and here it is also required true. So why it is nice? Because when we are getting something from the URL, it will be always string, which means we are getting here page and it will be 5 like a string. So actually, normally you will just write something like current page, and if you just get it like this, then $route, $query, $page, you will get here string. And probably you didn't think about it and you just pass it inside. So if you don't have validation on your props of the type, like here number, then something will be broken. But in our case not, because we are getting invalid prop, type check failed for property current page. Expected number, but it was string. And it is really nice because you don't just get the checking of the values, if they are there or not, but also the types. So for example, string and number can always be a problem. So in this case, we want to pass it, not like this. And actually, this is how people normally are making this mistake. But we want here at least to convert it to number, and then it will work. And as you can see now, we are converting this 5 from the URL to the number. This is why it is working. So now inside we can render this property from query parameter. So here I will render our current page. And as you can see, it is 5, and it is not some mock data, but this is real data from our URL. So here we simply used this route query page, and we got this current page. Just be aware that if you don't have any page here, then here you will get undefined and you will get an error. So if you don't want an error, then you need to write here or, and here, for example, 1. In this case, you will get current page 1 if you don't have any current page. And the last point that we want is the prop for our current URL or just plain URL. What does it mean? If, for example, we're here in /users, we want to build our pagination, so every our link starting with /users and then question mark page 1, page 2, and so on. In this case, we need to provide inside our pagination the base URL which we will use. So we can name it just base URL, or I think URL is also fine. And here we're saying that type should be string in this case, and it is also required. So here will be true. And we need to pass it from outside, so it will be URL, for example, /tags/ and here dragons. So we have such URL. Of course, we can also use real URL, doesn't matter for this case. And I want to provide it here, so it will be URL from outside. And as you can see, we don't have any errors, which means we're getting all these properties inside pagination. And this is exactly how I recommend writing props for every component, because in this case, it is super difficult to pass wrong data, and you will just see it explicitly in your console. And here is one more point why I like props in Vue so much, because they are evaluated in runtime. What does it mean? We're getting inside runtime our page, for example, and Vue checks with props this page. And for example, if you're using TypeScript with React or Angular, you don't have such approach because TypeScript is compiling everything first, so before runtime. This means that you can write your types, but actually if you are getting something from URL, then it may be possible that you are getting it not correctly, because it means that it is not checked in runtime, but before. And actually checking in runtime may be too late, but it is for sure better because it is more realistic than just checking the plain types. And one more point that I want to show you is the default properties inside props. So here, as you can see, we didn't use it at all, but for example, for limit, it may be a good idea to write here default, and let's say it is 10. This means that we can remove here required, and we have default property limit. And this means that we should not provide it from parent if we don't need to, so we can remove it here, but we are still getting here the limit 10. But of course, we can override it and provide our limit from parent. So here is limit, and now we're getting 20. It is super important to cover all your code with props. In this case, your code will be much safer. And you don't need to learn that much about props. Normally, I cover 99% of my cases just with type, default, and required. Actually, you can also create your custom validators, but you don't need them that often. I just used them like once in the last 4 years. So you can really do a lot of stuff with just standard validators. And actually, this is the last video in my series, Vue for Beginners, and I think you have already enough knowledge to jump in my advanced course, where we're building the real Vue application from start to the end, and it is going 10 hours. So if you want to improve your Vue knowledge even deeper, we're using the Vue with Vuex, and we're building really real scale application. So I will link it down in the description box below, as well as all my other courses. And if you like this video and you want more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and put thumbs up. And I will see you in my next video.